of the 11th Eurasian Forum. It is a chance to make a summary and to enrich it a little with the different opinions of our guests here. Just one moment of attention and some silence, please, so that our speakers can express their opinions. I would start from the representative of the Russian Federation at the European Union, Vladimir Shizov. He's invited the Russian of the European countries, because there are the friends, semi-friends, and enemies. In the light of what we've heard today, can you draw a sort of map of the counterparts that Russia has in Europe in the past 4 years when after sanctions were imposed on Russia? Well, 1 year ago, in this very auditorium, we discussed about the Montagues and the Capulets and drew a comparison with the European Union and the Eurasian Union. We should say that Shakespeare's talent was accompanied by great dynamicism in comparison to the relations between Europe and the Eurasian Union. There is a growing interest between our two groups of countries. We cannot really say that many steps forward were made. Not much progress, but there have been some favorable aspects. For example, at the end of last year, there was a visit made to Moscow. Then this year, other meetings concerning technical regulations. There is an exchange between among the European officials. There are a lot of people who show to have common sense. The Eurasian Union is an element of integration. It is an organization based on integration. The European bureaucrats have just needed some time to be able to recognize this aspect. Some of them feel that our relations should not be developed. Others feel that the contacts should just be at political level, and some others would like to enhance, to step up our relations. The meetings were not very numerous. Our European colleagues did not show a lot of political will. Maybe they may disagree with me, but I feel that from the Eurasian part, there is a similar situation. They also lack the political will to cooperate in terms of regulations and the regulation of a set of sectors. Maybe the development of a dialogue among experts would be more fruitful after outlining a constructive agenda, Russia is seeking contacts with the European Union. It has always pursued a line of paritatic cooperation within one single space, from Lisbon to Vladivostok. The Eurasian Union, the Eurasian region, and the European Union both maintain the same position because against the background of the economic turbulence and the attempts at reforming the economy, the reason for this is not as much that the European Union is interested in other players as to the fact that the European Union has not a long-term vision. It doesn't try and see the lines to follow in a globalized world. And the reasons for this stance is that the Western world, after winning the Cold War, feels that there are full members in the European Union and other countries that are not so European. But we have to think about our future. Let's go back to the relations between the two unions, the European Union, the Eurasian Union. This attempt at having Ukraine to make a defined choice has led to contrast between the European Union and Russia, with billions of losses owing to the sanctions imposed, whereas the United States are not suffering very much from the sanctions. One of the objectives is to undermine our union. There is a campaign going on, being waged against our country. We hear a lot about Russian hackers or about the Russians using Novichok around Europe. What about Romeo and Juliet? Maybe they will think that it is the Russian Tsar who ordered for Romeo and Juliet to be killed. I really hope that all the propaganda can cease. I would like to see more common sense. And in this regard, I must say that sometimes I do hear some sensible opinions. The Italian government, for example, has said that sanctions are pointless, and they invite that they urge that they be lifted. Our First Minister Medvedev has participated in European meetings, but it would be a good idea to participate in the Eurasian Union and in ASEAN. There is a need for a Euro-Asian space. In this dynamic world, the European Union and the Eurasian Union are complementary. They complete one another. Suffice it to think of the road network. we have to aim at collaborating together, and I hope that we can seize the opportunity to create an actual alliance and cooperation, because we are all playing on the same ground. Thank you very much. I would like to invite the other speakers to be short, because we are very, very late. We have Mr. Mehdi Sanai, the ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Russia. And he tells us how Iran should behave vis-à-vis the sanctions. How are sanctions modifying the conduct of your country in Central Asia?
First of all, I want to thank for inviting me to participate on such a great and interesting conference. For me, it was very interesting to hear about sanctions, and the attitude of conference was from the morning against the sanctions. All the speakers criticized sanctions and taking sanctions as a behavior in international relation. It was emphasized in the morning in opening ceremony, and after that in different sections, that we need more than ever in the world multipolarism, international relation and cooperation and dialogue. I'm really glad about it, that such a great attitude had this conference from the morning. And I'm really glad that it was emphasized during the day cooperation of different regions, the cooperation of Russia and EU, cooperation of China and EU, and bilateral relations of different regions, and multilateral relation of them. But about the sanction of Iran, I want to add also that Iran was remembered during the day a few times, but all the time with oil, and how the oil of Iran will be exported, how many persons will be reduced. I want to say Iran is not just the oil. Iran is a great civilization, and Iran is a country that has a geopolitical location also. And I prepared an article, of course, to say about the frames that Iran can, in the context of these frames, cooperate with EU and with Russia and EU and Atlantic region and ASEAN's, and to participate in regional and interregional cooperation. But we have limits of time. I will give the article to this, I think, website of conference, I hope will be published. But shortly, I can say that sanctions are not new for Iran. Sanctions, of course, they are not useful, they are not fruitful. This is not the good phenomenon, but I want to say Iran used to sanctions. Sanctions are not new for Iran. Iran resisted sanctions 40 years for its independent foreign policy and for its independent policy, internal and in the region and in foreign policy. And I think besides the official positions that usually are said, sanctions maybe officially are against politicians, maybe officially are against the government, but really more than all lose usual people and poor people from the sanctions. But Iran resisted sanctions, and I think will resist it far also. Iran is a country that the economy also is not just based on oil. You know that no budget of Iran and government budget of Iran is based on energy and oil, more than 50%. It means more than 50% we benefit from other resources besides oil and gas. I want to add that Iran is a responsible member of World Society, and during last years also showed that is a responsible member and exercise all its duties also that took in the context of GCOAP. I hope this multilateralism and cooperation of all other members of GCOAP besides the United States that are responsible, I mean EU, China, and Russia, support Iran until now with GCOAP, and we hope that this context and this group that it was named before 5+1 and now is 4+1. I hope this group and the real policy of this group and foreign policy structure of EU that all the time supported GCOAP, and this frame of cooperation will guarantee the continuation of this agreement. You know that some financial and economic mechanism also is prepared by EU, and it will be realized as it was informed in next future, and of course it will help the resisting and the continuation of GCOAP in future. Shortly, just I read a few sentences of my article about these frames of cooperation of Iran with world society and with different regions. In response to new challenges and conditions, the issue of interregionalism and economic cooperation beyond bilateral and integrational arrangements has become a key intellectual and practical trend in international economic fields. In that regard, in the past 2 decades, between some states enjoy special importance of various reasons. Iran, among a state who is utmost importance thanks to its geopolitical position in the Middle East, the Persian Gulf, South Asia, Central Asia, and Caucasus. Iran has major economic, communication, and shipping capacities for interregional interaction from East Asia to Middle East and from North Europe to the Indian subcontinent, which provide significant possibilities for facilitating extra-regional trade. One of the key realities and the geostrategic importance of Iran is that this country could link the Caspian Sea, which is at the core of 3 international main routes of Silk Road, Trasica, and North-South Corridor, to the Persian Gulf, Sea of Oman, and Indian Ocean. Iran has 3,000 kilometers sea border in its north and south, which is very decisive for this issue. Different frames that Iran can, in the context of these frames, active with interregional cooperation is Iran and the Persian Gulf, Iran and the North-South corridor, Iran and International Silk Road, Iran and the Eurasian Economic Union that was referred by Mrs. Nikishina. Iran has signed its agreement for free trade zone with this, in my opinion, a very important regional union, and other frames and contexts that Iran can prefer and make deliver its regional cooperation. I think this Eurasian cooperation and interregional cooperation is necessary for all over the world. Iran has traditionally a good relation with Russia and with Italy also. So first time I participate in on this conference, and I am sure that the results and achievements of this conference is very important for the region of and interregional cooperation in EU, in Asia, and all over the world. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sanai. Allora, concludiamo diciamo così, gli interventi.
So, the last presentation is Ambassador Sergei Razov, who's been an ambassador in Rome for a number of years. And in the light of what we just heard, it may be interesting to hear his opinion on the possible role that Italy could play in the European context in an attempt to improve relations with Russia, a country that we as Italians, as Europeans, want to keep, if you like, on the Western side, rather than having it move away from us towards China. How do you think things are going on the basis of recent steps in the Italian government? I wish, first of all, to thank the healthy portion of our audience that is apparently strong enough to remain here until this late hour of the day. I want to make a few comments on issues that have already been made. Well, first of all, indeed, I want to thank Antonio Fallico and his Italian and Russian colleagues for what they have done to improve the level of the Verona Forum. I came here for the first time 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember that at the time the esteemed ambassadors of UAE countries would open the forum to increase its political profile. Today, my colleagues and I take the floor during the last session of the first day to make this impossible mission, by definition, of summarizing the comments of the first day. This is in itself evidence of the top quality of this forum. So we heard the president of the Russian Federation, we heard the Vice Prime Minister of Italy, and a number of other distinguished guests speak by itself. So this is a highly representative arena where we can have a fruitful exchange of opinion on the key problems and the international scenario and the problems of the Eurasian scenario in particular. Having said that, I worked in China for a number of years, and there was a frequent statement, and that was that China-Russia relations have become better than they have ever been. That was the objective of our head of state, and I'm sure that this will continue to improve. Considering also the special traits of Russians and Chinese, I think that this is going to happen. Vladimir Chesov, who is a greater expert than I am about the relations with the European Union, said that over the past years there has not been any major change in that sense. I will take the liberty of expressing openly my personal point of view. I feel that the present relations between Russia and Europe, the European Union, are worse than they've ever been since the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union. I'm sorry to say this, but I believe that this forum, as a collective space for discussion, will offer new opportunities to find the ways to overcome this stalemate. Now, so I and my colleagues are responsible for Italy-Russia relationships, and I'm happy to say that in spite of the problems with the European Union, Italian-Russian relations have been improving day after day. And yesterday's official visits of the Italian Prime Minister Conte to Moscow testifies to that. May I add that that was the first official visit since 2012. From 2002. So that was 16 years ago. We did our best to welcome this distinguished guest. All the meetings were held in the best buildings of the Kremlin, and that was the formal side, if you like. In terms of practice of content, can I say that yesterday 13 agreements were signed, even though 13 is not a nice word in our culture, if you like. Agreements between governments, between regional agencies, between corporations. The two politicians met the management of Italian business. So there were really representatives of the top Italian corporations. So having said that, I'd like to illustrate briefly the content of these discussions and these dealings. I can say quite frankly that these contacts have been very fruitful, very favorable, and a practical positive sign was given to Italian and Russian businessmen that all these forms of cooperation efforts will be enhanced and strengthened. But going back to the question made by our chairman, in other words, how to avoid pushing Russia into the embrace of some of the countries in the East, well, I feel that we develop relations with many countries in the East and in the West, and with most of them we are ready to work more actively than our partners are. In terms of Italo-Russian relations, By the end of this year or the beginning of next year, there will be a very intense program of political and economic visits. Russia will have an active role in the Palermo conference organized by our Italian friends on the 12th and 13th of November. And the foreign minister of the Russian Federation will visit Italy twice before the end of this year on the occasion of the OSCE ministers meeting in Milan and the Mediterranean conference that is regularly held every year. In mid-December in Italy, there will be a plenary session of the Intergovernmental Economic Council for Commercial and Scientific Cooperation at ministerial level. It's a body that manages all sorts of trade relations and economic relations. The Italian President of the Senate, Ms. Casellati, has been officially invited to visit Russia. We are now establishing the schedule for that, and the same kind of invitation has been sent to Mr. Fico, the head of the Italian lower house, and I hope that in the very next future this will actually come true. So we will use all ways, in other words, to strengthen intergovernmental cooperation. This year in Italy, an important Russian program will start called the Russian Seasons. There are a number of initiatives involved in this, and on the 15th of December, this program will close. Everything started in January, so there will be the final event in mid-December in Rome. So those of you who may have a chance to take part are invited, of course. We'll be very pleased, and at the end there will be also a concert of Russian musicians. At the beginning today, we mentioned the question of sanctions. Of course, sanctions are negative and they have a negative impact on our international cooperation. Discussing this with many Italian business managers, I realized that this has a negative impact on Italian businesses that used to work very actively on the Russian market. I don't think that we can easily weigh the pros and cons, but surely we can talk about dozens of billions of euro losses. Can someone gain from this attitude? Well, perhaps so, but certainly not those that have been collaborating and cooperating for decades and are now losing some market share on the Russian market. I want to end on a positive note, however. Parties, power change, government composition change, prime ministers change. What does not change, however, are some key international interests of Russia and Italy. I'm sure that all these issues, political or economic, are crystal clear. That's what makes me more optimistic about the chances we have to put these things into practice in the future. Thank you indeed for your very clear analysis with no rhetoric. I think you were also highly realistic. You talked about pros and cons. I said that from the very beginning that we would end with Mr. Faliko's comments on what we've been discussing today, and especially whether he feels that this business diplomacy on which he has been working for so much over the years to improve the relations between our country and Russia has been confirmed to be successful during this very intensive working day, where over 30 people spoke.
Io intanto volevo ringraziare I presenti.
I'd like to thank all the participants, first of all. Very brave to be still here. They're glued to their chairs to be able to follow our proceedings. I would like to thank these three speakers, Vladimir Shizov, Sergei Razov, and Mehdi Sanai, for their contributions. We heard very analytical views. To respond to Mr. Kasseri, if I should identify leitmotif of today's proceedings, I could say that we recognize the role of the businessmen from many countries, not just the European or Russian businessmen, but we heard of the ambassador from Iran. 20 countries were represented here today, and paradoxically, the more sanctions are imposed, the more threats are made to add more sanctions, and the more the businesses react in a negative way to sanctions. Through our yearly forum, we would like people to understand that Russia, that is an important engine in the Eurasian region, is a natural ally of Europe from the political and economic point of view, an ally for Europe and Italy in particular. All contributions in terms of numbers and quality have been extremely exhaustive and important, even more than the ones we heard last year. Sergei Razov very responsibly has carried out very important work. They have taken the level of the political economic relations between Italy and Russia at a very high level. But we cannot forget that in addition to these political and economic relations, in terms of business, we are still lagging behind in comparison to the year 2013, the year when senseless and pointless sanctions were imposed. They were completely groundless from the legal point of view. They really breach the WTO statute, for example, and the international law. Our new government is now expressing this negative view on the sanctions. But like we said this morning, we have to go from words to facts. We have a deadline, and I'm speaking as a businessman now. On the 13th and 14th of December, the Council of Europe shall have to express either a positive or negative opinion on the automatic extension of the sanctions. This is an actual paranoia. Our government has taken the commitment to have the European partners share its view, its negative view of the sanctions. I don't know whether our government is going to succeed. There are some time limits, so there is a deadline, but we expect from this government not just a statement, a negative statement, and not then materialize into a vote, but an actual vote against sanctions, because sanctions not only affect the economy, but also the relations between people, and they erode the confidence that people have, that people share, the confidence between two countries, and they also affect